Welcome everyone to Points of Light's Volunteering and Social Impact Virtual Event Learning Series. My name is Beth Pan, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Convenings at Points of Light. We appreciate you joining us today, and we are very excited to kick off this special selection of webinars in the lead up to the 2025 Points of Light Conference that will be held June 3rd through the 6th in New Orleans. For those who have not been to a Points of Light conference, our conference is an annual global convening that brings together 1,500 nonprofit, corporate, government, and civic leaders for 3 days of learning, inspiration, and networking. And we're excited that today's webinar is the first in this special series, which offers a sneak peek into the high-quality programming and conversations that attendees experience at conference. So we know that volunteering is a powerful and unifying force for good. And our approach to planning programming and creating safe and welcoming spaces for conversation are rooted in Points of Light's values. And those values include humility, empathy and integrity, positiveness and kindness, being inclusive and diverse, and action-oriented. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Breauna Dorelus, founder and cause consultant at Connecting the Cause, to lead us in understanding community-centered volunteerism. Connecting the Cause is a consultancy. Welcome, Breauna. Connecting the Cause is a consultancy dedicated to dismantling harmful volunteer practices implemented by organizations and volunteers specifically towards Black and Brown communities. Breauna started her career as an AmeriCorps member and has spent more than 10 years in various volunteer management roles, including humanitarian aid efforts, refugee resettlement, and ministry. Breauna, we're grateful for you being here with us today, and I'm going to turn it to you. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Beth. I am excited, I think is a good word. I am grateful to be able to just share this time with you, to be able to share this space with you. As I talk, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can all get settled in. So we are going to be using Menti today. Please do not shy away from the chat if that's something that you want to use. But we're also going to be able to connect via Menti. And so what you would be doing is going to www.menti.com. It's also at the top of the screen. And you are going to put in a code 19799602. All right, menti.com. I see some hearts. Yay, some hearts are popping up when you get in here. Please put up your heart so I know you're here. Yay, this is great. Okay, we're plugged in. MENTI, and the code is 19799602. This is going to be a time for us to just see where the pulse is at. I know we can't actively connect with each other, see each other, and so this will give us a good connection point. Also, feel free to use the chat and to be able to connect there with some longer form understandings. And so what we are going to do is just set some guardrails here a little bit. So with the heart button, okay, moving forward with the heart button, if you hear something that resonates with you and you're like, yes, I want you to press that heart button, okay? I want you to press that button if you hear a resounding yes in your spirit. If you are like, wait a second, ouch, that was a hard truth, but I needed to hear it, but we all needed to hear it. I want you to put up the thumbs up, okay? If it's a hard truth and you're like, ooh, that hit me, but true, I want you to put up that thumbs up button. And the last button is the question mark. There was a new awakening, aha moment, okay, that just happened. Maybe something you haven't heard of before. maybe a new learning that you're experiencing. Maybe it's one of those like, oh, I just got an idea, right? What can I do with this idea? Or you have further questions about something. I want you to put that question mark button. So that's going to allow me to see sort of kind of where we are as a group together. And it's going to allow you to sort of kind of know where we are with things. I think one thing is also, really important that we navigate together is that we think about the ways, and, we come here wanting to understand community-centered volunteerism. I want us to also navigate what that looks like with each other in the chat, when it looks like with each other just during our interactions together. It was an interesting thought of navigating, do we want to keep the chat open? Do we not want to keep the chat open? As far as volume, as far as different people, as far as expectations, where they are along their journey. And we ultimately made the decision, like, keep the chat open. We want to create a space of community centricness, right? As we're also talking about it. And so I want us to be locked in as much as we can, be engaged as much as we can. I am fully here. I am fully present. And I also know that I have a lot of things that are going on in my own life. You have a lot of things going on in your own life, but you decided to be here today. And so I'm grateful for your time, for your energy, and for your dedication to this. And I'm also really interested in just seeing all of the different causes that people are connected to today, which is really fun and really exciting as we continue. So continue to use those hearts, continue to use those likes and those question marks, and we are going to keep things rolling. And so for me, what I want to start off with today is just being able to frame our time. I want us to settle in. I want us to be fully aware. We are going to talk about some things today that may be a first time of you connecting it with volunteerism. We know that there are different walks of life, different lived experiences here, and we honor all of those. And so I want you to read this to yourself as I also read this out loud. You can read it with me wherever you are. And it says, we believe in community in all its forms. We are connected to an organization that was created to amplify and support community. Creating harm towards the communities we serve and partner alongside derails that mission and our own. So we then must consistently and fervently ask ourselves, what am I doing to create or carry out harm that derails that holistic mission? What parts of that must I be accountable to for creating that harm? And then as we recognize that, what can I do in my power to repair and rebuild? So I want us to continue to come back to these three questions. What am I doing that maybe creates or carries out harm that derails this mission? What parts of that must I be accountable to for creating that harm? And what can I do in my own power to repair and rebuild? So, as we talk through our time today, I want to share a little bit about me, about my story, about who the heck is Breauna Dorelus and connecting the cause, and why are we navigating this today. One of the things that I will always remember forever and ever and ever, that was just a building block of all of this, is my dad. My dad, he is currently in Statesboro, Georgia, in the U.S., about 3.5 hours south from Atlanta, Georgia, where I am right now. And he's a farmer. My mom is in counseling. She is a retired educator. And we grew up in a pretty small town. It's a little bit bigger now because there's Georgia Southern, there's Walmart, there's some other places. And I always remember my dad, taking me to town. Sometimes I ride in the back of his pickup truck. And we would go pick up whatever for the farm. We would go and pick up groceries, and he would say, "Hey, Bree," or he would say, "Hey, Half Pint." He would call me Half Pint, and he was like, "I want you to come meet somebody." So I'd come over and I'd meet someone. "Hey, how you doing?" And he would just say, "This your cousin." And I would say, "Hey, cousin." And that was the end of the conversation. We exchanged pleasantries. We said hello. He said, "This your cousin. Remember, this your cousin." And I was like, "Okay, hey, cousin." And all throughout my life, my father consistently connected me to cousins. And so when I was navigating my community, when I was navigating my spaces, what I didn't realize he was doing is he was creating a tapestry of care for me. He was creating a space that wherever I went, I felt connected to someone. Wherever I went, I felt there was a sense of safety. There's a sense of trust. There's a sense of connection. And I love that because it made me feel like I had some folks around me who cared about me. I had some folks around me who were connected to me. And so when I was going through that, I didn't realize that he barely said their name ever. He didn't say their degree. He didn't say where they were from. He didn't say what job they held. He didn't say any of these things that we look for in conversation to recognize what type of dignity or what type of respect I should give you. Sometimes we listen for the Dr. Jessica, or we listen for the Professor this, right? And then we come up and we loosen ourselves and we give ourselves a little and we do the firm handshake. That was not there to decipher what respect I should and shouldn't give. It was, this is your cousin. So when you see them and they see you, you know there is shared mutual dignity and worthiness that is already innately inherent within them. And so that's how I grew up, just navigating those spaces. And so as I'm walking through life, I'm realizing that there's this thing called the nonprofit sector. I go to Georgia Southern University. I remember my mom would just fuel the gifts that she saw in me. I remember always going to Walmart and going to the checkout line and always wanting to pick up the National Geographic books. It was just something I was always drawn to. I always just flipped through them that millisecond in between putting the groceries, on the line and then checking out. I would always flip through them. She put me in Model United Nations. She asked me to go to different community centers and be a part of community meetings. And I went into Model United Nations in high school and college. And I learned that there's this thing called the nonprofit sector. I go to Honduras. I volunteer at a orphanage in Honduras. And I know some of you have had these moments, these like, how can I do this for the rest of my life? Like, what does this look like to just help and serve and be and I don't know, be in the mix? I see a lot of hearts here, a lot of hearts. So I see a lot of you can relate to this of like, I had one of those like Gandhi moments, like be the change you wish to see, like bumper sticker. Like I definitely had one of those moments. And so as I'm navigating that, I find out nonprofit sector exists. I apply for AmeriCorps. I'm an AmeriCorps Vista alum, and I make it to Atlanta, Georgia. That's where I serve. And I say this all the time. I don't know if this is throwback. I felt like Mary Tyler Moore, like when she like throws up her hat, like you're gonna make it. Like that literally, I was like, I'm here and skyscrapers and traffic. And I really felt this moment of like, I have arrived. And y'all, it happens and I'm here and it hits me, this nonprofit sector, that's a big footprint. It just hits me like a ton of bricks. I mean, it hits me. And I had the deep assumption and thought processes that, yes, what I experienced at home of this tapestry of connection, it just translates into this, but it's just bigger, right? It's just more massive. That's all. And I realized that the more and more and more I got entrenched into what was the nonprofit sector, the more and more it felt disconnected to what community felt like. And I have some hearts here, so I know some folks are resonating with me. There is this feeling, this deep feeling of disconnect that I started to feel. And things called KPIs happen, and there's a thing called a board, and there's strategy and strategic planning, and these things that are in alignment, but have its own body and makeup and agenda. And then there's stakeholders, and there's grant compliance, and there's what is this thing that doesn't feel like the thing that I thought I was getting into. And I'm in the sector, and I'm in it for a long while. And as I'm in it, I'm navigating this in the best ways that I can. And I'm literally thinking to myself, what does this look like to really go deeper and to really navigate the ins and outs of this? And so what I start to do is I'm having moments in my career of paternalism, like that's popping up. I'm having moments of the times where the giver and the given to are very separate, very designated. They're not really crossing lines or crossing those barriers. There's this sense of why do I feel these instances of microaggressions, these instances of let me talk to the other person in the room? Who are you? You're the director? You? Let me talk to someone else who can get me to the right things and the right people. Volunteers who I was recruiting, who I was made to recruit, there was this disconnect of my boss is asking me, were the volunteers happy? And that was the strategic goal, more so than sometimes was their impact. What was the impact? And so as I'm navigating through these spaces of supremacy and these feelings of disconnect, and that the community is not centric in the decision making, I have to start asking myself and having hard questions like, the folks who look like me oftentimes are the ones that are not in the same room making the decisions about the very lives that they are trying to change. Where are they? Why aren't we experiencing an ecosystem of care versus a hierarchy of care? What does it look like to flip this and turn this thing around and really navigate this for the good? And so I had to make a decision to recognize that today, that moment, today and every day, you, me, we have permission to interrogate the good. We have permission to interrogate the good. What does that mean? That means that volunteerism is beautiful. Don't you dare walk away from this webinar thinking that Breauna said that volunteerism sucks. I never said that. I love it so much. I love it so much that I want to look at the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. I want to look at it all because I want to continue to make it better. I don't want to stick with the status quo. I don't want to stick with tradition. This is what it's always been. We have to keep moving forward as our world shapes and move forward. And in order to do that, we have to interrogate. And it's okay to interrogate. It's okay to have to re-navigate and see what this looks like for us. And so, as we think about volunteerism, as we think about moving forward, I want to put this loud and clear. We know that the act of volunteerism itself is not innately destructive. out of all of us, from all of our walks of life, we've seen how volunteerism is a prompting for movement. It is a prompting for action. It is a prompting for world change. We have seen the ways that civil rights movement was built on the backs of volunteers, of people who said, here I am, what's up, let's go, right? Volunteerism is an experience for connection, for cultivating an ecosystem for care, and for living out service to one another. I don't have everything that I need. You don't have everything that you need. And together we can create an ecosystem of care that structs that up, right? That makes sure that system is bound up by us. But what happens when other things creep in? What is the issue here? The issue is that the act of volunteerism itself, even though it's not innately destructive, it is the act of volunteerism that, when used as a tool for saviorism, pity, othering, self-interest, it creates psychological, mental, spiritual, and yes, even physical harm to those on the receiving end of service. We have to recognize and be accountable to what happens when volunteerism is not used and utilized for the good. We have to take an account of that. And so, what does this actually look like when we think about volunteers and making sure that community is centric? I want us to dive deep. We're going to do a deep dive into this. My friend, my brother, my colleague, David Park, he has a mental model that centers neighborhood voice. And I think it's a beautiful model to sort of kind of think through. So what you see on your screen here is we have the sun, we have the different planets that are orbiting the sun. And when we think about the sun, we think about how it has such a draw, right, to the other planets, how the other planets orbit around the sun, orbit around its energy, orbits around its laws, right? I want us to think about the sun and the ways in which it centers all of these planets. I want us to think about the times where community was supposed to be the sun and it wasn't. Instead, it became a planet that orbits something else. I want to deep dive into this a little bit more. Let's take a look under the hood here. If all of you looked at your mission statements, or all of you looked at the reason you have volunteers, the reason you have the mission or the organization, you would all say it's for the community. It's for community wellness. It's for bettering the community. It's for making sure the community's needs are met. But what's happening right now is we see the center of the universe, of the sun, of this solar system, excuse me. Oftentimes we say that in philosophy, but it does not happen in practice. Really, what happens in practice is that we are centering volunteers, donors, board members, anything else but community, right? So we have volunteers, donors, board members as the sun, and then we have all of these other things: recognition and retention, risk management, impact metrics, volunteer roles, the way we storytell and market, strategic planning. All of this is on the emphasis of volunteers. And guess where community is? Where have we placed community? We've placed community right here as orbiting volunteers, donors, and board members. We're going to get into some very specifics of why that looks like how that looks like that in all of our organizations oftentimes. What we've done is we've reversed. As we started, we created the mission, we created the role, we created the vision. We said, yes, community first. And then all of these other things start to creep in. And community has switched places in our priorities. It has switched places in the work. I oftentimes thought about the fact that in my career, I was called volunteer manager. So inadvertently, my role is to manage volunteers. But where does community fit in that? If I am being asked, were the volunteers happy? Were the volunteer t-shirts? Do you have the right logistics for the volunteer event? What are the logistics? Did you get the right tools? Did you get this? Did you get that? And there's very little emphasis on what does it look like to insert community as the central role. That is what we're talking about when we mean community-centric volunteerism. What I am not saying, and you better not go off this call saying either, is that Breauna doesn't care about volunteers, donors, or board members, right? Because I didn't say that either. Everyone has a place. So we're going to sort of kind of switch this around, and we're going to navigate this, right? And focus on what it takes to really shift this. I'm going to go to the second one. Boom. Y'all saw the difference? Did y'all see it? It was quick. Where's community now? Community is at the center. Community is the sun. Volunteers are still here and they have their place. Donors are still here. They have their place. Board members are still here. They have their place. Strategic planning, boom. Impact metrics, boom. Risk management, it's all still here. But how does it look to be dictated, to be pulled in by community, right? And let it orbit around community. So instead of volunteers being at the center, and we're asking, what's the best time for volunteers to, for individuals to volunteer? We're now asking, what does the community looking for in terms of ways for individuals to volunteer, right? Instead of impact metrics for donors and moving that into the center, what we're thinking about impact metrics, how many relationships were built with the community this year? What does relationship impact look like? When we think about storytelling and marketing, volunteers are no longer at the center being the hero. Community is at the center being the hero, and volunteers are shown as being a resource, right, to that support and not the hero of the story. We start to reshape and redevelop all of what it looks like, right? And so as we think about this new centering, I want us to think about some of the barriers that comes in between this, right? Because what happens here is, let me say this again, let me go back. Everybody wants to say community. Yes, yes, community. But when you think of community as being a default rather than community being the intention, then you can easily sway away from the community being central, right? When you think of community as the afterthought, not in the sense of, oh, we're not thinking about them, but in the sense of how do we keep inserting them in to all things, right? How do we keep making sure that their voice, their skills, their assets, their processes are integral, right, to what this looks like, right? We have to really make some hard choices and navigate what it looks like to be able to put community first. So let me go on to the barriers of what this looks like. One of the barriers that we really have to navigate is a lot of top-down decision making, right? And guess what, folks? The for me, I'll say for me in my work, the alternative is not bottom up. There's nowhere where we should be calling community the bottom. So let me just let's do a reframe of thinking here. It's not the adjustment is not bottom up. The adjustment of it is an ecosystem of care, right? So you as a professional in your role, you have a place. Community has a beautiful, sacred, designated place. It's our responsibility to create the facilitation of this, right? Oftentimes we hold things like the risk management, we hold the volunteer opportunities, we hold the volunteer events, we hold the how we conduct ours. How does it like to facilitate? Instead of volunteer opportunities, what does it look like to call them communal invitations, right? Being able to create measures where there is not a top-down approach, but everybody has their rightful place in this work. I want us to do a little exercise here that I think is really important as we start to shift our mindsets towards community-centric volunteerism, or what I also like to call co-dreaming. What I want us to do in the chat right now, I want us to look at this first image, the image over here that I'm sort of kind of circling. I want you to put in the chat some words that come to mind when you see this image on my left. I'm trying not to give any indication. But as I'm circling this image, what words come to mind? Okay, wow. Mess, confusion, tangled, messy, entrapment, chaos, messy, busy, miscommunication, unstructured, overlap. Okay, somebody says potential, overwhelming, unclear. Someone says organic, okay, tangled, unruly. Someone says deeply intertwined, cluttered, frustration. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, now what about the right side? What about this other image that we see over here? What are we feeling about this other image, this opposite image? Clean, spinning, process. Okay, somebody said boring, smooth, perfect, untangled, flowing, spiral, clear, pretty, structured. Somebody said a yummy cinnamon roll. I would like one of those right now. Alexis, there is a center. I like that. Flow, deep, manageable. Okay, all right, cool. All right, keep them coming. All right, one of the things I want us to think about is this seemingly confusing, disordered, knotted, tangled, messy. Oftentimes, when I was in a position, I was given the messy and I was told, figure this out. How many other people put the hearts of if you've gotten a mess and they said, figure it out? Okay, yes, a lot of us have gotten a mess and folks have said, figure it out, right? So when we think about this and we think about the mess, what our linearness, what our clarity sometimes wants to do in our professional brain, when we put the professional hat on, oftentimes what we want to do is make it less mess, right? We want to make it clean. We want to make it organized, efficient, coordinated. I want us to come outside of ourselves for a minute, and I want us to look at this ball of mess, and I want you to think interwoven. I want you to think intricate. I want you to think layered. I want you to think complex. Right? Not confusing, complex. Confusing does not equate to complex. Right? I want us to think about those instead of the disorder, the knotted, the tangled, the messy, because what did I just describe? When we think about interwoven, intricate, layered, complex, what did I just describe? I described relationship. I described community, right? So on the other side, when I first thought about this and looked at this, I saw a lot of things of what you already saw, right? On the right side, I saw well arranged, streamlined, organized, efficient, coordinated, polished, almost dare I say peaceful, right? Maybe a little harmonious, maybe a little stable. I see Maddie in the chat. I'm going somewhere with this, and you're beating me to the punch. What if we looked at this and saw strict, rigid, stiff, confining, predictable, formulaic, restrictive. Yes, micromanaged, Beth. Unflexible, Annette. I see those. April, peaceful, but maybe not useful to anyone, right? Dare I say suppressive? Can I go that far? Let me go that far and say suppressive, maybe? Here's the point that I'm trying to make. Y'all, we can't professionalize people out of their purpose. We can't professionalize this work so much to the point I understand risk management. I understand background checks. I understand uh, protocol and practice and procedure. But what I want us to really dig deep in and really navigate is this is not an either or, right? How do we hold this rhythm of both? How do we hold this rhythm? The other day, I'm also a practitioner. So the other day I'm at an organization. I'm doing some good framework, some deep work. I go to a community meeting and it is loud and it is fiery and it is good, right? To hear voices from all walks of life trying to come to specific priorities. It's okay to be in the yes and, right? That's what we gotta sort of kind of sit there because we are in the middle, folks, of connecting all these entities to their cause, connecting people to passion, to serve. And this is not cut and dry. And we also, on the other side, have communities who have been intentionally, historically oppressed and overlooked. We can't handle that the same way we handle the corporate group coming in and navigating their day of service. We can't navigate that with the young high schooler who's their first time volunteering and they're looking to care about something. All of this is a dance and it is connected. And so we think about keeping community as the centric focus, we have to sort of kind of switch our mindsets to thinking about the interwoven relationships of community, and that it's going to look like both of these at times, and sometimes it's not going to look like one or the other, but being flexible, and sometimes how all of this may create barrier, how all of this may create harm, and being able to put community at the center of that to be able to move forward. So I'm going to talk about some more real things that we also have to deal with as social impact folks, whether you're in corporate government, you're an individual here that's volunteering, whether you're retired, wherever you are. Because of the society we live in, because of the systemic harm, there are some deep conscious and subconscious thoughts that are dictated through our thoughts into our practices within organizations, within the way we think about community, within the way we navigate community. Can we keep it real? Give me some hearts so we can keep it real, okay? I see a couple. I need some more. Can we keep it real? Okay, thank you. Y'all are here with me. Number one, sometimes we have an innate distinction of untrustworthiness towards community specific Black and brown communities that we have to navigate. Sometimes we focus academia. We got this degree, we got this thing, right? We got this certificate over lived experiences of folks who are literally navigating this, right? We need to be thinking about the ways in which we are innately thinking and saying, I don't think they have the right answer. Because if they had the right answer, they wouldn't be in this position in the first place. What we end up doing is we end up blaming the person over really thinking about the systems for which people are here in the first place. So if we go up and we're in front of volunteers or we're in front of community members or whatever the case may be, and we're like, thank you all so much for coming. We're so grateful to have you here. Today, you are going to be the hero of their stories, and we can't do this without you. This creates that centricness of volunteer. We need you because you are here and you are the only folks who are able to save them from their problem. The people become a problem to be solved. They don't become a partner in the solution, right? When we do that, when volunteers hear this day in and day out, we don't try to do this, folks, but this is what ends up happening. We try to inadvertently stroke ego and make sure that they come back because they had a good time, because we want to retain volunteers, because we got numbers to meet. And mind you, we have pressure from all ends. I got development over here asking for a feel-good story. Love y'all, development. I got marketing and communications over here asking me for a good story. Love y'all, marketing and communications. I got a grant over here that's asking me for volunteer hours. We love you, funding, right? We got all of this stuff that is begging for the attention, right? But we have to make sure that we are keeping community in the center of all of this. You know what, marketing? I actually do have a story for you. And this is a story of how a volunteer and a community leader pull together and pull their resources together to create a strategic outcome, right? I actually do have something to tell you, marketing. Hey, marketing, here is a young guy who's in the community, and he's actually a photographer. And I would love for him to have a piece in our annual report, and he could be the one who's doing the photography for our annual report, right? How can we meet in the middle to do these things in a deep, intricate way, right? And we are moving towards, I would love to see spaces and places. Y'all, this is my dream. Places and spaces where I go into organizations, I go into spaces of volunteering and movement work, and you can't tell the giver from the given to. The volunteer is the community and vice versa, right? There has been a welcoming from the community, even if you live in a different, area, a different part of the world, a different zip code, whatever the space may be. And we're all here, not under hierarchy, but under support. And that is what this community-centric piece looks like. So let's look at some specific philosophy over practice, right? I know we're going to check mark a lot of these things, and we're going to look at a lot of these things and say, yep, we do that. Yep, we do that. Yep, we do that. But let's look at the practice, okay? So we all say we have a community-centric mission, but we're going to go under the hood and see the real intricacies that they may be a little bit more far and in between. This is me not trying to guilt trip you. This is me not trying to shame you. This is me having to navigate also the fact that I have been complicit in harming the communities that I've said that I'm going to serve. I remember when I came back from Honduras. I remember when I came back I took another trip to Costa Rica. I remember spending years and years in the nonprofit sector. And I started to get this deep, righteous indignation. And really getting into this point where I'm like, oh, what is this? What is this world? What is volunteerism even? And I got so angry at the paternalism I saw. I got so angry at the racism towards me as I'm gonna keep it real, as a volunteer manager who was a Black woman, and most of the volunteer base was white. And the amount of harm that was done to me in those places where I was demeaned, where because I was a Black and brown person in a particular space, they were handing me a meal saying, you must be a part here, asking me to do things that were not in the purview of my work because they felt like they had the right? So I want to quickly shout out to all of the Black and brown volunteer managers out there, the historically marginalized volunteer engagers out there who do have to come up against so much of this. When you are actually an identifiable part of the community that you belong to, and you're having to navigate this very thin line of professionalism, and I've been called to do this, but also these are my folks, and I'm feeling weird about this. I want to shout you out because I've been there, and I'm always there with you, and I see you. And so I want to make that clear. And so I get in all of this tizzy, and then I have this really big aha moment that happens as I'm so upset. And I say, wow, Breauna, you have all this righteous indignation and you're so angry. And years ago, when you were in college, you put up pictures of children that were in this orphanage. You did not blur out their faces. You put them on Facebook. You did not know their names. And you talked about them like you were their hero. Humble yourself. And I had one of my own haha moments. And I continue to have aha moments today of going back in my career and things that I justified for the funding, or things that I justified for the feel good story, or things I justified for retention just to get volunteers in the door. So I'm really wanting to navigate this with you. I'm not coming to you as expert. I'm coming to you as friend. I'm coming to you as community member to see how we can navigate this better, right? And I just want to make that known. Okay. So we're wrapping up in some minutes. But I want to get real practical as far as some examples. I have seen this all the way from Australia to my backyard to the UK. I'm connected with volunteer engagers across the world, and they see this where we're not placing community at the center, we're placing other things at the center, and the community is being drawn in by these things and not central to these things. So number one, powered, I'm not gonna go through all of them. You will get a copy of these slides so you'll be able to see. So don't worry about writing them down. You'll get a recording too. Let's just lock in. Power dynamics. Community-centric volunteerism is recognizing and addressing the power imbalances, right? And fostering that co-creation. When it comes to traditional charity models, volunteers and organizations hold power over recipients. When we think about this, we're like, oh yeah, well, we had the focus group to ask them what we needed, or we had the listening session to ask them what they wanted. But are they a part of the implementation of the solution? See, that's the next step, folks. They are the drivers, they are the movers, they are the creators of the solutions. And not only that, but they are the ones that are front and foremost. This may require a change in structure. That's what we're talking about. This isn't a small lift. And this takes years, right? If you're on sort of kind of this big huge boat trying to turn it around, this takes some time. How are we seeing community roles? In traditional charity models, communities are passive recipients of aid, right? In community centricness, communities are, like I said, active decision makers and implementers in the solutions and initiatives. Okay, we can go down the line. Let's talk about volunteer motivation. In traditional charity models, there's a focus on individual goodwill and charity. I'm not y'all gonna hear me say this. I'm gonna say it loud. I'm not saying don't appreciate volunteers. I am not saying do not say thank you. I am not saying don't recognize them for the amazing work that they do. What I am saying is I wish I wish we would challenge volunteers while they're there to encourage reflection on why they're even having to volunteer in the first place and connect it to the system, the harmful system, the root cause for why it's happening, right? I have been in 11 different volunteer orientations where it's, hey, y'all, thank you so much. We couldn't do this without you. We're so excited to have you here. And I'm so honored for you all to be here. And go do the good work. And then afterwards, it's, thank you so much. You packed 50 backpacks. This is amazing. Please come back for more. I started saying in volunteer orientations, thank you so much for being here. You are an integral puzzle piece to this work. And thank you for bringing good to the good that's already here in this community, right? That's different. That's a little bit of a shift, right? When we think about orientations, I used to put in my orientations, here's the good that's already happening right here in this area. This is what you're partnering with today. This is what you're amplifying today. Right here, we have a food apartheid. This is an intentional area where grocery stores are not here. It is intentionally not here because of the makeup of this community, right? And so because you are here, you are connecting your resource with the grit and the glamour that is already present, right? We're connecting not just harm, but we're connecting systemically what's going on. And that creates a different, it creates a liberation, right? We have, y'all, we have the opportunity. Danielle, yes, so many volunteers, I'm seeing this now, so they have perception change because their volunteer experience. Let's take advantage of that. Yes. Yes. Okay. When we have a direct connection to being able to navigate what this looks like, think about this, y'all. All across the planet, every year, there are tens of millions of people in volunteer orientations. What if we were saying this? What if we were talking about community centrism right in this space? What difference would that make? Here are a couple of more. We've talked about narrative and storytelling. Equity and inclusion. You know, traditional charity models may unintentionally reinforce existing inequalities. But yes, volunteerism has a place to dismantle systemic barriers. Get volunteers involved in what's going on, not just the transactional, right? See themselves, volunteer-centered relationships. Volunteers can actually see themselves as a part of the community and learning from the community. Volunteers do not have to be outsiders offering help to the community. If there's an invitation in, let's share with our volunteers how sacred that invitation is, and to utilize that invitation for the betterment of their citizenship, right? And making sure there's that deep responsibility and accountability. So I'm wrapping up here in all the words that I've said. We are moving from I want to help the needy to I want to help dismantle the systems that make them in need. And guess what? Volunteerism has a deep, deep place for that because we've seen it done before. We've seen it done before. And I'm not saying don't feed them. I'm not saying don't clothe them, but I'm saying as you feed them and as you clothe them, what are the systems that are creating that need? And how are you galvanizing volunteers to give the food and to activate, right? To give the thing that's needed and to live a lifestyle of service that's not bound by these things. We will continue to keep ourselves in business if we just want to help the needy. We will keep ourselves in business. If that's what you want, there's the answer. I want to help the needy. But if we really talk about wanting to make sure that we don't exist and there's a deep type of liberation, then that means that we are called towards systems change. Last thing, what's on the line if we don't? Broken trust, unfulfilled missions, a hamster wheel of just us continuing to do harm, and more of the same. But what happens if we do? What happens if we do keep community central to this work? We'll see that movements will shift and lifestyles will change for service, and that people will walk away feeling righteous indignation and excited about staying in the fight and not the feel-good approach of what it looks like, and they can just wash their hands and walk to the next thing. Everybody has a place in this. So I'm going to stop. I know I'm a little bit past time for Beth to jump back on. I'm going to stop my share. I would love for you, Beth, to go ahead, take over. I'm
Breauna,
quiet.
I have no desire to take over. This was incredible. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think, there's so much learning and inspiration. I would say your inspiration is contagious. And I think one of the headlines for me out of this conversation is that when we take the time to interrogate the good, we gain a valuable opportunity to reframe our perspectives. And I think that is a huge takeaway from all of us. So thank you for this
Thank you.
conversation. I,
Thank
I
you
know we
all.
could have gone on for another hour easily. So I will say this, I am looking forward to seeing you in New Orleans at our
Yay!
2025 Points of Light conference.
Let's do it.
One of the things that we wanted to do at Points of Light with this webinar and wanted to kick it off this series with you, Breauna, is to just give an example of the high quality of programming, the depth of content and conversation that happens at our conference. So if you have not attended a Points of Light conference before, we hope this has piqued your interest. We will be sharing details and information in a post-webinar email today with this recording and with more information about how you can register or find out more information about the agenda, the speakers, the networking opportunities that will happen in New Orleans this year. So with that, I know we're at time. My thanks to you, Breauna, on behalf of all of us at Points of Light, and thank everybody for joining us today. We hope to
Thank
see
you
you soon.
all so much. Please, I want to hear your stories. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I know all of my information is coming, with the recording and all that good stuff. So Would love to stay connected. Thank you so much, Points of Light, for having me. And thank you for being a leader in this sector and being able to partner with Connecting the Cause in such a good work. And I'm so, so excited about New Orleans. So thank you.
There as well. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.